Hi, Sophie.
Hi, Sin.
Hi, everyone. And welcome to the Snack Covenant episode 285. And today is the first episode in a series of Bloodborne remakes that we're doing on the channel.
That's really good to know, Sin, because I was wondering why it was taking us 285 episodes to bring up Rom.
Were you wondering, though? Because we have yet to do an episode on Yosefka. So, Sophie,
Yes, Sin.
what are your qualifications to talk about this topic?
I have first class honours, I have a PhD, and I have a certificate in training and assessment, so
That's it?
I platinumed Bloodborne.
So did I.
It's a pretty common platinum, honestly. It's like 10%.
Why are you trying to take away from my achievement?
Wow, Sin, that's really impressive. Did you do it by yourself, or did you have help?
Go up to the stairs to the lantern.
Where's the lantern?
It's up the stairs, just
I am
across
up the
bridge.
stairs. Oh, across the
going.
bridge.
How do you
Okay.
not know? This game is tiny. 3 years. How do you not know?
Does the name Rom have any significance or meaning?
So, the name Rom in Bloodborne is really only in the English script.
Mm-hmm.
In the Japanese script, the character's name is Roma, and they go with Rom in the English one.
Oh my god! Like a CD-ROM.
And when you beat her, you're Rom hacking. The dead one in Upper Cathedral Ward is a corrupted Rom. Oh my god, it works.
Can you tell me anything else about the significance of Rom's name?
Right, so this is going back to the whole, Roma/Rom thing. Because Roma is more obviously a human name. And that's tying into Rom initially being a human. So if you imagine, you meet Rom, the vacuous spider, sounds a bit like, Rom the Space Knight. It's like a science fiction name. We don't know anyone called Rom that's not like a robot or an alien or something. So that makes Rom seem very otherworldly, but if you encounter, Roma, the vacuous spider, it's very much like, oh, okay, this might have been a person. And the name Roma sort of it fits with, Micolash and Yuri and Lawrence and all these names. Roma sort of fits in. The reason why they went with this, I'm assuming, is that Roma is also an ethnicity. And I think they specifically, maybe didn't want to have you murdering someone named after an ethnicity in this game.
Thank you, Sophie. So, we encounter Rom as a spider. But was she human once?
Well, Sin, eagle-eared listeners will know that, about 30 seconds ago, I said that Rom used to be human.
Wow! Was her name Rom then?
I'm assuming.
Well, you're assuming. But we have names such as Abriatus, the Moon Presence, Orphan of Cause.
Watching your face during this is great. It's like Sin.exe is loading.
You know when you're under pressure and you're trying to remember more great ones?
All the time. It's a recurring nightmare of mine that I'm in public and I'm on stage and I'm asked to recite the names of the great ones and I haven't studied.
So what I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
back when Moon Presence may or may not have been a human,
Yeah.
her name may or may not have been the Moon Presence.
Well, their parents had remarkable foresight, if that's true. This is actually getting at something interesting with the Great One's names.
Mm-hmm.
Those are, I think, pretty heavily implied to not actually be the Great One's, names.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the names that people have given them. Because all those names are descriptive. So, Ebriatus And Ebrietus is a kind of a moth. It's either a moth or a butterfly. It's some sort of like Lepidoptera.
Hey Google, what's Ebrietus?
According to Wikipedia, Papa Sabritas is a Mexican snacks company.
That is absolutely perfect that at this point in the podcast, there is an Ebrietus snack food that actually exists. So as I was saying, like Ebrietus, like it's because she is kind of shaped like a caterpillar or a moth. She's got like the big wings and everything. Amygdala, again, like Amygdala almond. It has an almond-shaped head.
Mhm.
Cause is called Goss.
Gos. あるいは Gosum.
And that, I think, is supposed to sound like the word ghost. And then, like, obviously, like, moon presence. I mean, literally, she is called the moon presence. That's not her name.
You know what?
Yeah.
Hey Google, is there a moon snack?
I don't know, but I found these results on search.
Useless.
Your Spotify account needs to be linked.
Thank you, Google. Please stop. Hey Sophie,
Yes, Sin.
do moon snacks exist?
I don't know, but here's what I found. A moon pie, stylized as moon pie, is an American confection popular across much of the United States, which consists of 2 round graham cookies with a marshmallow filling.
Thank you, Sophie.
My pleasure, Sin. Your Spotify account must be linked to your Google.
So I forgot where I was going with this, but I'm pretty sure Sophie was doing the talking.
That's true.
So please continue.
Right, so like the moon presence name, moon presence, clearly not the name, it's a description.
Mhm.
If we go with her name being Flora, again, the word Flora means flower. She is
Right.
like tied to these like the flowers in the dream. She kind of looks like a flower.
Mhm.
That also applies to like the enemies, like the winter lantern being called that, because there is a Japanese flower called a winter lantern
Mhm.
that looks a lot like the brain sort of head of the winter lantern. And people actually, I found this out recently, they make dolls out of winter lantern flowers.
Aww.
If you sort of like, if you pull the petals down, you can make a little human figure out of them. So I think like that's where winter lantern comes from. And you look at other things like the crawlers are just called crawlers. They're just
Mhm.
like, that's what they're called. Because they're a thing that crawls.
Mhm.
Celestial Emissary, another one. Like,
Mhm.
it's not called like the Celestial Emissary. It's just called Celestial because that's a description of it. So,
Yeah.
like, all of these great ones, presumably those are just the names that they're given by people when they're encountered.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's not like their name. It's a name that we've given them. Rom is different because Rom was her name when she was a person.
We keep referring to Rom as she, but we
Mhm.
know that she's a girl because Miyazaki confirmed it.
Yes, he said so in an interview in the official Future Press Guide.
Thank you, Sophie. Where was Rom born? Do you think she was born in Yharnam or is she an
No.
outsider?
She's an outsider.
And Roma
Mm-hmm.
is a name that's used in like Slavic cultures.
Yeah, yeah.
So she comes from like Eurasia somewhere, maybe.
Well, where is Yharnam in the real world?
Like Europe somewhere, maybe.
Yeah. Yharnam is odd in that it appears to be like the area seems very Slavic. The architecture is based on Prague, but everyone talks like they're from London.
So in the Bloodborne universe, there's a little city between Prague and London.
What, Germany?
There we go. Yharnam is in Germany. Thank you, Sophie.
Okay.
Did you know I actually took a German language class back in college?
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's because I was listening to a lot of Rammstein back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, oh my god, there's a German class. I should take it.
So you can understand Rammstein.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Turns out most people took it because they were really into Rammstein. But yeah, I can now recite Rammstein lyrics and understand them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good. I like how this is the remake. It's like we've had a few years to really like think about things and to like perfect the podcast. Now we're gonna do Rom again, and it's already about Rammstein.
Hello, it's From Software President Hidetaka Miyazaki here, dragged away from the launch of Elden Ring to answer questions about this game that came out seven fucking years ago. But the silver lining to this cloud is that if I do that, no one will have to listen to the podcast. So just tune out when I'm done. All right, let's get this list of points that require clarification, you fucking morons. 1. Is Rom a real Great One, or is she kin of the cosmos? Rom is kin of the cosmos. I subtly hinted this by having her drop an item that says she is kin of the cosmos. If she were a Great One, the story would have ended about 20 fucking years ago. Okay, 2. Talk about Rom's drops. Rom drops an item that says she's kin of the cosmos because otherwise, if she were a Great One, the story wouldn't need to happen. 3. Mention that Rom only has 1 chord, but you need 3 to ascend. That's not a question, Sin. Rom only has 1 chord, but you need 3 to ascend, which is why she drops an item that says she's kin of the cosmos, but the player, through their own choices, can acquire 3 chords, allowing them to ascend. Fucking 4. Part 4. What is the deal with the stone that the Gardens of Ice hold? I don't know. I just want to be clear that if anyone has questions about Elden Ring in the future, I'm just going to tell you to ask George. Anyway, the podcast is starting again. Don't listen to it.
So, Sophie,
Yes, Sin.
at some point in her life, Rom decided to apply to Byrgenwerth, better known as,
Dignity City.
and she got accepted.
Yeah.
Before we continue, can you just give us a brief overview of what Byrgenwerth was like? What were they studying? What's up with that whole thing?
What's up with that whole thing? Hi, Sophie here. It's 4:40 a.m. and I'm really feeling it, but I just received a letter from Sin that asks me to please explain what they did at Byrgenwerth, because apparently we forgot to in this podcast that's about Byrgenwerth. Master Willem of Byrgenwerth was fascinated by human history and human evolution, believing that both of these things had reached their natural apex in him, the smartest man alive. This was until he met a little slug who changed his life by revealing a whole new world of cosmic eldritch entities beyond his comprehension. Excuse me? Beyond whose comprehension? Certainly not mine, thought Willem, and went to commit genocide. Consequently, they were all afflicted by a hideous curse, so much of the academic program is dedicated to figuring out ways to break the curse by outsmarting God. They also probably had to attend like a research methods workshop or something in order to graduate. I'm just assuming based on personal experience. But speaking of personal experience, I'm going to hand the mic over to my good friend Micolash right now.
Aha, welcome to our dream. But we don't need anyone, not anymore. The sacred rite nears completion. The dream will be real. We will be granted eyes. Cos. Or some say cosm. Do you hear our prayers? As you once did for the vacuous Rom. Grant us eyes, grant us eyes. plant eyes on our brains to cleanse our beastly idiocy. Oh, majestic! A hunter is a hunter even in a dream.
So Micolash's little rant about Rom fills us in on a lot of things. Fills us in that he knew who she was. He was presumably there. She used to be a person. She became the spider thing as a result of her somehow communing with Cos. It also reveals that Micolash seems kind of jealous.
Very jealous.
Yeah.
You know what, Sophie? I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
How? I'm not used to this.
You know how her full name is Rom the Vacuous Spider?
Yeah.
I just had a vision of Micolash being like, well, everybody calls her that. And everybody's like, nobody calls her that, Micolash. Everybody calls her Rom. And normally when you go fight her in the boss fight, it just says Rom.
Rom, valedictorian spider.
Yes!
Yes.
And then Micolash snuck into the school at night, hacked the computer, and wrote Vacuous Spider.
He made a fake profile for her on Facebook. Micolash seems to display a degree of jealousy toward Rom when he's talking.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about, like, Micolash's whole goal in Bloodborne is that he is basically trying to go through what Rom went through. And, of course, when it happened to Rom, she turned into a spider. And he's sort of very, like, condescending. He's like the vacuous Rom. Like, he's like you did with that fucking idiot Rom.
Aww.
And he's like, you chose her over me. And he's saying, like, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do it properly. And he's doing, presumably, the exact same thing. He's just using a different umbilical cord.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sophie, you mentioned a couple of things there. You said he wants to do it properly, and you mentioned an umbilical cord. So we're going to go back to Byrgenwerth. Rom is human.
Yeah.
She's very smart.
Yeah.
She's doing very well in her astronomy experiments, blood injecting classes.
It's a double major they offer.
And Master Willem notices that she's super good at this stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, recently, a little debacle happened in the Fishing Hamlet. But it's okay because we brought back some valuable materials.
It's a dead baby. She's like, oh, Willem, this is great. Did you bring the baby? And he's like, kind of. Good evening. I am Queen Yharnam, and I have been called upon because apparently this podcast is popular with the sorts of people who benefit from having things explained more than once. Provost Willem of Byrgenwerth is a man whom I am on record as having had a number of differences with in the past, so I would hate anybody to think that what I am about to say is in any way motivated by spite. Whilst I am assured that Provost Willem's academic contributions were of merit, he is also a man with a number of limitations. Rather than address his shortcomings, as others would have done through application and hard work, Willem instead chose what some would consider to be the easy way out: colonial genocide and killing a baby. This led to both myself and my good friend Cos developing a fairly robust dislike of both Byrgenwerth and its associated beast hunting community. The remains of the baby then proved invaluable in the construction of a spider who, with the best will in the world, found the whole thing a little overwhelming. They were then stolen again and used by someone who was very keen to get everything she wanted right now, when she really should have waited until she was a real doctor.
Mom, hurry up, I'm stuck in a nightmare!
Yes, Mogo, be quiet, I'll be there soon. Sorry. Ultimately, I was partially responsible for placing a curse upon them, and their city, and their children, and their children's children. But am I angry? No. We actually encounter Rom 3 times. She's in the lake at Byrgenwerth. There is what appears to be her corpse in Upper Cathedral Ward. And then there's the Chalice Dungeon encounter with Rom.
Mhm.
This is something that's like... It gets a little convoluted, but I do think this is deliberate. I do think the Chalice Dungeon encounter with Rom is supposed to be like quote-unquote canon. Because the things that happen in the Chalice Dungeons, they make absolutely no sense unless you assume that you're basically visiting a single point in time. Like, the obvious one is Queen Yharnam. Queen Yharnam we encounter in the game as we're playing through it on that one night that we're hunting. We encounter her and she has been basically disempowered. She has lost her child, she is weeping, she is like this sort of spectre that is haunting the town. But if we go into the chalices, we encounter her at the height of her power. She is pregnant with Murgo. She can summon all of these weapons made from her blood. She's incredibly strong. They can't both be happening at the same time. Because the entire point, like everything that's going on in Bloodborne's story, as far as menses are concerned, is happening because they stole Yharnam's child from her pregnant stomach.
Mhm.
So for her to be pregnant in the Chalice Dungeons, that has to be like a past version of her. That can't be the current one. The other example that's very obvious, even though people still argue about it, is the Bloodletting Beast.
Right.
Bloodletting Beast cannot be in the Chalice Dungeons with a head and also decapitated in the present. You have to be going back. And that makes sense because it's Bloodborne. It compresses time and space a lot. Hunter's Nightmare works the same way. Deeper you go into the nightmare, the further back you're going, so perhaps deeper you go into the chalices, further back in time you're going.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this is to say, the encounter with Rom in the chalices, I think that is supposed to be where she transformed.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a reference on, I believe it is the Augur of Ebrietas. And this is one of those references that I think is actually different depending on the version you play, because I remember bringing this up to Meph and she wasn't sure about it. There is a reference to there being at Byrgenwerth the beginnings of meditation and sort of astral projection from within the labyrinth. Like, that's where they were doing it. They were having basically seances in the labyrinth to try to commune. And that is essentially what, like, the choir latched onto. Like, that sort of led, like, that's the basis of the choir's methodology. Except they're doing it with the stars. So my take on that, like, that encounter with Rom in the labyrinth, it's also preceded by Rom spiders. The spiders that Rom summons during her fight, they are in that dungeon, and you very rarely see them anywhere else. And that is not a random dungeon that is specifically designed to have those spiders in it. So all of this is to say that, like, that is probably supposed to be a thing that really happened. Like, Rom was actually down there at some point. She actually transformed down there. Or she was transformed and already down there, we're not clear. But she probably was down there at some point.
Thank you, Sophie. And you mentioned Rom spiders. They are called Children of Rom.
Or Romlets, yes.
That's so cute. And they appear in her boss fight as well.
Yes.
And can you tell me more about them?
Right, so the Children of Rom are... Again, we're going into, like, these are implications, but they seem very deliberate. The Children of Rom have a very small chance of dropping Madman's knowledge, which is an item that is supposed to be, like, coming from people. It's coming from, someone who gained too much wisdom, who went mad.
They gain some inhuman knowledge.
Yeah, and it's like, well, they're a spider. But it's like, well, okay, Rom is a giant version of that. She was a person. Were Rom's attendants, were they also people at some point? Like, was that all of them together all transformed at once into spiders, and Rom, because she was the center of it, she became, like, the head spider and everyone else's... Because we know, like, Patches, for example. Patches is in the form of a spider. He's not the same kind of spider, but he is a spider. So it's like, is this like the same deal? Is this like people... Were these the other students basically involved in that? Did they also transform?
Thank you, Sophie. So, Rom is a spider now. What is she doing?
Well, this is another interesting point, because a number of things about Rom just don't make physical sense. Because I mentioned, like, we encounter Rom's corpse in Upper Cathedral Ward.
That's right.
Now, it is impossible to get to the room with that corpse in it until after Rom is dead. So, there is the theory. What if that corpse was there, it's just there all the time? As soon as we start the game, that corpse is there because Rom is already dead. She died a long time ago, but because of the way Bloodborne handles, like, the dreamlands and consciousnesses and stuff, her consciousness is persisting in the dreamlands. And that kind of makes sense because the way that we fight Rom is that we jump into a lake.
Right.
The lake magically transports us somewhere else that appears to be like the reflection of the lake. It's like appears to be a similar area, but like a nightmare version of it. Like it's like we're fighting essentially on the reflection of the moon in the lake.
Mhm.
And like we have no trouble breathing there. We have trouble walking there. It's clearly not physically. We're not actually just walking around in the lake. And the game makes a point of saying, like, okay, well, these bodies of water, like these reflective, rippling surfaces, sometimes bodies of water, sometimes mirrors, sometimes the sky, they are a barrier between one world and the next.
Mhm.
It goes into this whole thing about moon viewing, which I think we'll discuss some other time, but it does kind of track that, okay, maybe if you jump off, you're just encountering Rom's consciousness, and it's like going to the Hunter's Dream, but it's the Rom version.
Mhm.
However, there's a slight snag in that, which is that we're told that Willem left his secret in the lake.
Mhm.
Willem's secret would be Rom.
Yes.
There's nothing else in the lake. And Willem points toward the lake when we go there. So this raises this question of like, well, if Rom died and that's just a passage to her, how does Willem know that? Has he been down there? And it raises this other possibility, which we can't discount because of the fact we don't go to Upper Cathedral Ward until after Rom is dead, which is that Rom is physically in the lake. We may not be physically encountering her, but her body might be in the lake, like she might have drowned there.
Mhm.
And after we beat, like, the Byrgenwerth area, because we don't actually know how much time passes. Basically, as soon as the Red Moon appears, we black out, and then we come to later on, it's not clear how long it's been. In that time, it is possible that the choir went there, whoever is surviving
Mhm.
from the choir, and got Rom's body, like, after she died by our hand. And they brought that body back up.
So you're saying it's possible the choir brought her body to the altar?
Well, okay, I think it's without question that the choir put that body on that altar. The question is when.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the altar is also very interesting. Because Rom herself is not the altar, right? She is on the altar.
This is the confusing part, yeah. So, that area that we're talking about is called the Altar of Despair.
Mhm.
And what happens is, as far as most people are concerned, from what you see in the game, the Altar of Despair is Rom. It's just this dead giant spider thing. And its only function in the game is that if Annalise dies, you can bring a scrap of her flesh to the altar, and that will bring her back. That's your only interaction. So it seems as if, like, I guess Rom's corpse rewinds time, brings you back to life. That's the takeaway most, including me, got from it the first time, because you think, oh, Altar of Despair just seems to be Rom. There is an altar there, and Rom's body is on the altar. The problem is that basically because of the way the area is designed, because of the way the camera works and the way the lighting works, you probably won't see the altar. So it's not that Rom's body is the altar, it's that Rom's body is on the Altar of Despair. And that, I won't say it makes sense of it, but it at least lines up with what you do with Annalise, because it's like, alright, Altar of Despair brings things back to life. Were they trying to bring Rom back to life? Is that why she's on the altar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to bring Rom back to life?
Well, Sin, you know how after Rom dies, a giant red moon appears in the sky and the city is destroyed?
I never noticed.
It's hard to pick up on. It's very subtle. That's the thing about Bloodborne. It just doesn't make any sense. So maybe there is no moon. Sin, can you prove the game even takes place in Yharnam?
Can you even prove there is a game?
I can't see it from where I am.
Nope.
I can see, what can I see down here? I can see, Pax Corpus. This started off as a video game based on Aeon Flux, and then they lost the license to Aeon Flux. So they had to, really rapidly change some of the assets around, so you're playing as, the store brand Aeon Flux. This game exists because I'm holding it, but Bloodborne. No evidence. Debate me.
So, Sophie.
Yes, Sin.
Can you tell me what was Rom doing, what's up with the Red Moon, and what happened when Rom died?
Radio. So this is one of the parts of the game where, it's unclear why our character actually does this. Because everything else in the game, you can kind of say, okay, our character had a reason to investigate that thing. Vicar Amelia, for instance. We're told to go to the Grand Cathedral. It makes sense we would go there and encounter Amelia, because we've been told to do it. Rational thing to do, because people are telling us to do it. Yeah, no, it is. And, the Orphan of Cos fight at the very end. We know why we would do that, because the Orphan of Cos is the source of the nightmare. If we get rid of the Orphan, the nightmare will go away. Murgo's wet nurse, we have to get Murgo back. There's always our character has a reason to do it.
Mm-hmm.
The Rom fight, that is our character destroying everything.
You know what that could be, though?
Yeah?
Maybe it's an implication that our character is becoming a little bit blood drunk.
But they don't know there's a spider there.
Another thing could be is that our character is a brilliant detective.
Yeah.
And they put all the clues together and realize that Micolash is in the nightmare, and in order to get to him...
Micolash, who they've never met.
Micolash,
no idea who he is. We're told about Rom twice before we encounter her. The first time we don't actually know that this is Rom, and it's the note in Erden Chapel. And the note in Erden Chapel says, the Byrgenwerth spider hides all manner of mysteries and keeps our lost master from us.
Right.
That is Rom.
Mm-hmm.
The lost master is Micolash. So,
mm-hmm.
We know in retrospect what that means. The first time we encounter it, there's no, asterisk the spider is in the lake. The second is when we go to Byrgenwerth itself. This is very significant. It is a handwritten note. There's quite a lot of notes in Byrgenwerth, but this one is handwritten. It's not a book. It is a handwritten note, and it's near where Yuri is standing.
Right.
So that note says, the spider hides all manner of rituals certain to reveal nothing, for true enlightenment need not be shared. That is our second reference to Rom. She is hiding the ritual. So it's very similarly written to the one under Erden Chapel. Those are the two hints we get about Rom prior to encountering her, and neither of them suggest killing her, I think. They suggest that, she's hiding something.
Yeah.
So I guess our character kills Rom out of a sense of curiosity.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very odd development in the story. Anyway, those notes were right. Silly us, because Rom was. This is never really explained how exactly it works, but she is essentially blocking the red moon from descending. This is kind of communicated visually and through the area design, because Rom is fought on literally the reflection of the moon. So in a sense, she's actually on the moon. She's just on a reflection of the moon. So okay, kind of makes sense. She's literally physically in between the moon and the world. She's stopping it from coming down. And when she is defeated, the moon descends, and then I think the next note you find is the menses ritual must be stopped.
Ouch.
Oops.
So, interestingly enough, after you kill Rom, and when you go back to certain areas, things are a little bit different. Like when you exit Eden Chapel, there's a giant amygdala on there, and you're like, I don't remember seeing you here before.
I wish I hadn't killed that spider.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I actually want to ask you something.
certainly.
If you have enough insight,
Yeah.
you can see that amygdala before killing Rom.
You can see that amygdala and the one outside Yahagol. The ones inside Yahagol you can't see until the red moon.
So, what is the implication?
The implication about the world or about how the game was made?
Both.
Okay, so we've talked a bit about Amygdala before, but I'm sure that episode will now become remastered and we won't mention this. But basically, like, I likened Amygdala to pilot fish. They're like a species. There's not one Amygdala. That's what differentiates them from the other ones. And it seems like every time there's some sort of like rift between the reality, like the veil is sundered and the dreamlands are sort of leaking through. Every time one of those things happens, amygdalas start congregating around it. Like they just sort of like appear. Because I don't know if they're drawn to it, if they feed off it or something like that. So it makes sense for there to be one in Erden Chapel because there's a great one living there called Erden. And it makes sense for there to be one outside Yahagul because they're doing all this nightmare stuff there. And I'm guessing like those are just the first two, and then once the red moon happens, the others show up.
Interesting, thank you. And you also mentioned the game's development?
Yeah, so Amygdala, like the role that they have played shifted from version to version to version.
Mm-hmm.
And also the way that the map data is structured in Bloodborne is like a little bit weird.
Okay.
The red moon itself is like it's sort of only applied locally, but the implication is that it's everywhere. For some reason it's like it's only showing up on some maps, and like from what we can tell from looking at all these different versions, like at one point the red moon was everywhere. Like it would be a world state change like the eclipse in Dark Souls 3, and something happened and they just had to basically like make it so it was just the areas that quote unquote needed the red moon. That's like all they had time to do, basically.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, do you have any idea how Master Willem knew that ascending Rom would block the ritual or the red moon?
I don't think he did know.
Okay.
Because like Willem is someone who has really his only like the only time we see him talk in the retail version, it's him putting the kibosh on messing with old blood by saying we're not enlightened enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that possibly is a response to Rom. I think he saw them mess around. He thought we were going to ascend to a higher state of being. Rom happened. Rom is not quite a great one. She's vacuous. She's not enlightened enough. And that's when Willem's like, okay, we don't know enough. We're not ready yet because look at what happened to Rom. The blocking of the red moon, I don't know how intentional that is,
Mm-hmm.
but it's happening and they seem to know it's happening.
And we've talked about this before, but Byrgenwerth has used blood. And because it didn't go so well,
Yeah.
Willem decided to stop that. And he told people that he's going to go meditate on a balcony for the next 5,000 years to be able to ascend to a higher plane.
This is something that, like, when the game first came out, it was assumed that there was a sharp distinction between, like, blood and insight, and those were the two paths that you could take. And the Healing Church is all about blood, and Byrgenwerth was all about insight.
Mhm.
And that's not how it works at all.
Because, as we know, insight is the depth of a human knowledge. And everybody's sort of trying to reach that point.
Yeah, it is a methodological difference, and not even a big one. The goal of the Healing Church in Byrgenwerth is the same. It's like, get everyone's brains wired differently so they can ascend to become cosmic space gods.
Yeah.
So the difference between them is not what they're trying to do or even really how they're trying to do it. It's that Lawrence and Willem have different approaches. Willem is a much older, more conservative person. He's very, analytical, and he's very, I think, in his own head in a lot of ways. He's clearly someone who's been in academia for a long time. He's possibly not that connected to the world outside. He's very into everything being theoretical. And when things go wrong, he says, okay, rule a line under that. It didn't work.
Mhm.
The problem is we didn't know enough, so we are going to spend however long it takes, possibly, after I am dead.
Mhm.
We're going to spend that long just learning and learning and learning and learning so that next time we do this, it actually works.
Mhm.
That is what he means by our eyes are yet to open, fear the old blood. He's not saying old blood bad, never touch. He's saying don't fuck with this thing because we're not smart enough. We're playing with fire and we don't understand how to do it, so don't touch it. Lawrence, much younger, much more ambitious guy, comes across as someone who's he's got a massive ego, he wants to leave his mark, he wants to be remembered as the great Lawrence.
Yeah.
He's determined to I'm going to completely, overturn our understanding of what the human species is by myself. It's going to be called Lawrenceism or something.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a giant statue of myself erected in a church.
Yep.
That's the kind of guy he is. And he's like, nah, no, we can do this. I can do this. I, a genius, can handle this.
Right.
And he's like, I'm taking this stuff and I'm going to have my own healing church. And I'm going to mess around with it there and you can't stop me. And neither of them succeed. Because Lawrence he's too greedy. He's too ambitious. He's too full of himself. That he just messes around pretty much immediately and it destroys him.
Yeah.
Willem is so conservative and so timid and so worried about what might happen that he does nothing.
Thank you, Sophie. So now I want to talk about more physical, technical aspects of ROM.
The technical aspects of ROM. What kind of ROM? Is it EP ROM? What kind of settings do I need on the hex editor for this? Is it a high ROM? What kind of assembly language am I looking at?
Could you please describe what ROM looks like?
Well, ROM is a spider that looks like a caterpillar. She has a lot of little tiny legs.
Yes.
She has a very long, squishy abdomen. One could say like a spider, because the other day I was attacked by a nest of spiders with very long, squishy abdomens.
Oh, God.
What makes her not look like a spider is that she has tiny, tiny little legs. She has a whole lot of little tiny legs that run along the length of her abdomen. Whereas the children of Rom, they have the same abdomen design, but they have 10... The spiders in Bobbin have 10 legs. They have 10 very long legs, so they look way more like you would imagine a spider to look. Rom looks like a caterpillar. The other thing about Rom... there's a number of things about Rom. Let's go. Rom's got a lot of eyes.
Yes.
Yeah, Rom's head actually looks a lot like a human head that's been distorted.
Yes.
It's another clue that she used to be a person.
Especially in the official artwork.
Yeah, it looks like a human head with its mouth is sort of pulled into a weird shape, and it's covered in eyes.
Uh-huh.
But it has the shape of a human head. It's not the shape of a spider's head.
Yeah.
The other thing about her head is, her head is really, really hard. It's actually basically a shield. If you want to damage her, you have to go for the abdomen.
Mm-hmm.
And when I played that, I thought, oh, that's really clever because she's vacuous, so she's so stupid. that her head is just like a rock.
Aw.
Yeah. She's also covered in little fronds, little flowers and leaves and things that are growing out of her back.
And she also has this interesting looking tail.
Her tail makes her look like a carrot. She has these like leaves that come off her. You can imagine if you turned Rom 90 degrees, you could pull her out of the ground like a vegetable. And this again ties back into something it's in Bloodborne. It's not talked about very often, but the way that the Great One's designs, they all, pretty much all actually, seem to hybridize animal and plant in a way where it's not immediately clear, like, what this even is.
Hmm.
Because Rom is a spider, but she's a spider that has flowers and leaves on her. And then you have, like, Amygdala. It's, like, also kind of a spider, but it's also kind of an almond and also kind of a mushroom, like a morel mushroom.
Hmm.
The moon presence, again, her name is Flora. She has these, like, flowing, like, stems coming off her. We never see Cos, like, alive, but you can imagine, like, Cos probably had, like, bioluminescence and things like that. And the way that it plays around, particularly with mushrooms, like the Celestial Emissary is a mushroom. Lumen flowers make you look like a weird mushroom mess, because a mushroom is like, it's a weird thing. It's like its own like fungi, and like I think they're not technically plants because they don't take in light. And the plant thing, it ties in with this recurring flower motif of like there are flowers that get their energy from the moon.
Hmm.
Like we have lumen flowers that are like it's called a lumen flower. What is it? Well, it's like a sunflower, but it gets its light from the moon. So the idea of these things are like they're tuned into the moon and the stars and the sky. So they're kind of like a flower that turns toward a source of light, and they absorb the light, but they're also an animal. And Rom is just a melange of strange traits.
Did you just say a menage? This is a family friendly podcast, Sophie.
Melange.
I know, I speak French. That was a joke.
It's good.
So I want to ask you something. I have this vague memory of this detail. On Rom's tail, or somewhere around there, there's like an imprint.
I don't remember.
If there is.
If there is. Hang on, I can do this. Hang on.
Yeah?
We can do this live. We can find Rom. Hang on. We can get Rom's model out.
Okay.
Oh, well, no, we're doing it.
Awesome. And I have another question about Rom's appearance.
Why, certainly.
On the altar, she seems to have some extra legs.
No, she has fewer legs on the altar.
They're bigger.
Yeah. I think she has more leg per square inch on the altar, even there's fewer of them.
There we go.
So yeah, the Rom on the altar has legs like the Children of Rom.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that is because that's actually Rom's old design.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly why they changed it, but yeah, Rom was initially conceived of with legs like the Children of Rom. It's possible, actually, that made her difficult to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you imagine, like, the legs are quite large sticking out the side, it would be hard to hit her in the abdomen. You'd basically only be able to hit her from behind. So it's possible it was just done for that reason, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have Rom open. What am I
Yes.
looking for?
Look at her tail.
Did you read this somewhere, see it, or imagine it?
I don't know. I just have this trace of a memory. Is there anything on her tail? Any sort of drawing?
Oh, do you mean like that? It looks like a snowflake.
Okay. Can you scroll down more?
I think that's just her texture is symmetrical there. It's like repeating.
Okay. So maybe it's like a mix of different memories. Can we look at the very end of her tail? Like if I want to see inside the loop,
Inside the loop. It's like a high concept science fiction series. There.
Okay. And can you tell me a little about Rom's attacks when we're fighting her?
They're bullshit.
Thank you, Sophie. I think you're not the only person who thinks they're bullshit. But it's okay, because I have, in front of me, the official Bloodborne guide
Oh, okay.
with Rom's page open.
Wouldn't it be great if you opened it and it just said, like, Rom is bullshit?
That would be awesome. I'm going to read you from the guide, and since you're an expert in this, tell me whether or not the guide is right or wrong.
Now, to be fair, the guide was written before the Old Hunters.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be no whirly jigsaw strats in this.
So, under preparation, it says, stock up on bolt paper, quicksilver bullets, and blood vials.
What boss don't you stock up on bullets and blood vials for?
Shaman bone blades can be helpful during the second and third phases if you have access to them.
Alright.
Molotovs and throwing knives are only marginally useful.
I would disagree there. I would say that Molotovs and throwing knives are more useful than shaman bone blades.
Thank you, Sophie. If you've obtained and upgraded the Tonitrus from Yahar'gul, bring it alone, as it's extremely effective.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Also, consider bringing a weapon with sweeping horizontal swings, such as the Hunter Axe or Ludwig's Holy Blade for dealing with the small spiders.
I would say Hunter Axe, no. Holy Blade, yeah, because that has a piercing attack and Rom is weak to piercing.
Also, Holy Blade is like the best weapon ever, so.
Yeah.
Now, under overview it says, Rome will not be hostile the first time you enter the boss arena, so you can take your time getting prepared. That's so cute. I just imagine like you entering the boss arena and you're like, let's do this. And then a montage starts where you're like putting your wraps on and like training shadow boxing, you know? And Rom is just standing there like side-eyeing you. Like, what's he doing? Why is there a montage? Why is the Rocky music playing?
I thought you were going to say it's a montage and you're like trying on different outfits. Every time we come out, Damien, if Mentos is like...
During the first phase... so the guide does not have as in-depth knowledge of lore as we do, because it says... During the first phase, he will not attack you.
Ooh.
Boom.
Boom.
And you'll only have to deal with the small spiders. During the second phase, I'll call Rom she, because I know the lore.
Yeah.
She'll summon another group of spiders and begin using her magic attacks. So what are her magic attacks, Sophie? Thank you, Sophie. When you're close to Rom, she'll use a large spherical magic blast to drive you away. At mid-range, she'll perform a much wider area attack that causes boulders of ice to rise from the lake beneath you. And if you're outside the range of those spells, she'll rain ice boulders down on you from above. This is written very poetically. So what do you think about these attacks? Thank you, Sophie. Rom will summon a final group of spiders at the beginning of Phase 3 and will begin using a flailing thrash attack if you stand close to her for too long.
She definitely will, yes.
But will otherwise continue to use her spells in the same manner as during Phase 2. For their part, the spiders are only a threat when they're close to you. If you draw Rom far enough away from them, they'll forget about you and begin aimlessly wandering the area? I've never done it this way. Have you?
No.
I feel like that's a lot more trouble than it's worth.
I feel like we're getting at the core of the problem with Rom as a boss.
Yes.
Alright. So, Rom is Phalanx from Demon Souls, version 2. In that it is about a central, like, we'll just say it's a core. There's like a core defended by a bunch of drones.
Mm-hmm.
And like Phalanx, it also has this gimmick whereby, like, the central creature and the things it's summoning to fight you, the front of them is largely immune to damage. That's like, so in Phalanx it's a shield with Rom, it's the spiders with the rock heads. So you have to get behind them to hit them. So it's that dynamic again. Where it starts to fall apart is that Rom can also hurl what the guide is calling ice boulders at you, right? I think they're supposed to be meteorites, but whatever. We'll go with ice boulder, because they look exactly like the ones that the living failures summon from space, and exactly like the ones that the Black Sky Eye summons also from space. Comets are mostly made of ice, I guess it makes sense.
Okay.
But, anyway. So the problem is, it's clearly supposed to be like this is a risk-reward thing. Like, you want to run in and hit Rom, but in order to stay safe, you have to manage the spiders.
Right.
The problem is that Rom can hit you from range. And if one of her, like, meteorite/ice things connects, they're probably all going to connect because they come down in a big line. And if all of them connect, you'll die.
Mm-hmm.
The other problem is that the spiders are very fast and they have an attack that ignores your defense.
Mm-hmm.
They jump in the air and they do a little dive bomb, and if that connects, unless you're on full health, you're dead, and even if you are on full health, you're dead if your vitality isn't high enough. So you're having to manage all of these things, and they're so completely random that it doesn't work as this risk-reward thing like Phalanx did.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you were fighting Phalanx, like the Phalanx little soldier things were very slow, and Phalanx was also very slow, and Phalanx couldn't hit you from a distance. You could kind of see how it plays out, but like the ROM thing is like, it's just all these things happening at once. And it's very, very chaotic and hard to manage. When the guide mentions Molotovs, I actually like kind of agree there, at least on New Game. Because Molotovs, like hitting Rom from range actually is really useful. It's really good, because if you get too close to her, she just AoEs you and the spiders get you. This guide was obviously written before the Black Sky Eye existed, but any kind of ranged attack on Rom is probably the way to go when it's sort of like getting desperate. The addition of Damien of Mensis really helps. Basically, it is a fight that is sort of designed around you supposedly managing these things to stop them overwhelming you, but those things are so fast and random, and there's so many of them that you can't realistically do it. So every time I do it, I just rush her.
Yeah.
I ignore the spiders, and I just hitting her over and over again up close is actually like less risky than trying to clear out the spiders before doing that. So the thing about Rom as well, when it says Rom summons spiders, Rom actually has a set bunch of spiders that are always there, they're just invisible. And they appear as she changes phases. If you do enough damage to Rom, she actually changes phase twice. The way you do it actually is, because she's not hostile in her first phase, what you can do is you can take beast blood pellets and you can punch her in the head over and over again.
Oh my god.
Because that will raise the beasthood meter without damaging her, because the
Okay.
head's defense is so high. So you pound away at her head till the beasthood meter is full. Then you switch to something like the Whirligig Saw that has a really constant like L2 attack or something. Or like the Blades of Mercy or something that just attacks really, really fast. Run to the side and just wail on her. With a full beasthood meter, you can actually get her like down pretty low, like to like a third or a quarter in one shot.
Okay.
And if you do that, she will change phase twice, which means all of the spiders appear at once.
Okay.
So you're just drowning in spiders.
Okay.
This happened to me in real life the other day. Happened yesterday. This is what it's like finding Rom in real life. So, a couple of years ago, my grandmother died. And no one has moved into the house she used to live in, but she still gets mail. So I have to periodically go there and clean the mailbox out, because it ends up being full of like letters from like local politicians and like catalogs and stuff. And I went there yesterday and I pulled all the junk out and put it in my bag, and I was walking home, and then I realized that in the center of the pile of junk mail there was a rolled up chemist catalog in which had nested a large family of spiders.
Aww.
And I noticed this because they were climbing up my arm.
Oh god.
So I had an entire bag full of spiders. The problem is it had other things in it, so I couldn't just yeet it. So I actually had to sit there in the middle of, like, the street, trying not to attract attention while removing a family of spiders from my person.
Did they try to throw ice boulders at you?
No, it was actually less annoying than fighting Rom. I'm looking through Rom's animations now. So this is animation A00000010.hkt. I want you to describe what you're seeing.
Oh my god. It's Rom breathing heavily while her eyes jump around?
That's a good description, yes.
What is happening? What is that?
I have no idea what this is. It's clearly not used in game. But it's like, the fact that her mouth is gigantic makes me think this is to do with, like, they changed the bones or something of the armature, but, like, her mouth is opening and closing like she's breathing, but her eyes are literally, like, flying around her head like they're planets orbiting it. It is so bizarre looking. I found a ROM animation you'll really love.
Okay, what is it?
So, you love Night at the Roxbury, right?
Yes, I love it. Dun 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 dun.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more.
Hey, it's Hidetaka Miyazaki, back again with a little something for everyone who was dumb enough to sit through this thing to the end. I suppose you were hoping it would get better. It never did, but somehow it is better than the original podcast about ROM that this is a remake of. So we're going to listen to a little clip from that original ROM podcast now.
Water acts as a gateway. It looks to be water that has moonlight reflected on it. Maybe any surface with moonlight on it, because there are the baths in Yahagol that will transport you from bath to bath. They only work when they have moonlight on them. When you beat Rom, you wake up in a bath in Yahagol. So like you've gone through the water to meet Rom, and then when that's ended, we don't know, it's not ever explained and it's kind of clumsily done. You just suddenly you're somewhere else, but crucially you're somewhere else and you're standing in another body of water, like you've fallen out the other side of the water.
Mm-hmm.
You also have like Micolash is able to jump through mirrors.
Right.
They're on the inside, but they have an obvious like moonlight sheen on them, like they're glowing and shimmering in a way that other mirrors don't.
Oh.
And you also have like the messengers appear from the bath of water.
Is there any water around the lamps?
Well, they have that odd sort of like bubbling effect.
Yeah, true.
Like when things rise out of the ground, they have a sort of like messengers have a little bubble effect around the outside of them. And that goes into like the research hall where the patients have enlarged heads because they're filling them with water. The idea being that like the water is acting as a medium. It's helping them to hear the great ones. And Kos appears through the ocean. The idea being like the ocean is a gateway to the Dreamlands. So Kos was able to come out of the ocean.
And there are also all these runes that have to do with the lake and the sea.
Yeah, the lake and the sea are means of defense. They say it's like it's guarding sleep. I'm not entirely sure what that's supposed to mean. But the idea, I guess maybe like it's deflecting stuff. If you look at the reflective surface of water, it's almost like there's another world in the water. Like, because you can see everything reflected in it.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is like, in a sense, there is another world in the water. And there's a Japanese sage called Dogen. He uses the moon in a lake as a metaphor for enlightenment, where he talks about how like the moon is this huge glowing body that orbits the earth, and there's no way that like you could ever hope to contain it. But if you have a tiny pool of water or a lake or a puddle, you can see the whole moon reflected in it. So it's like, if you picture the human mind that way, like you might think that all wisdom and all knowledge is beyond you, but it's capable of being kept in the mind of a single person in the same way that the whole of the moon can be captured in like a single bowl of water.
Did you know that if you listen to a seashell, you can hear the ocean? So, like, a seashell could be like a cell phone that lets you contact the Great Ones?
I seriously think that's what's going on with the research or patient. Because they talk about, like, there's a sound in their head as the water is, like, churning around. They say, like, overtly, like, listen to the sound of water. So I think the idea is, like, there's all this water, like, slushing around inside their heads, and the noise of that is, like, churning around, and it's forming into, like, the voices of the Great Ones. And that's what ends up happening with Adeline. When you give her all of that brain fluid, she starts saying, like, I can hear, like, this voice talking to me. And that's what produces the milkweed rune, because her head was so full of all this stuff that was, like, slurping around, that this Carol rune, that's the voice of a Great One, was, like, revealed to her just through that.
That was apparently the best part of it, so now you don't need to listen to the original at all, but apparently you can if you go to Patreon and give them money that you could be spending on the Elden Ring DLC. I'm just saying that Papa needs a new Berserk keychain.